Today on the show, we have Ben Lalez from the Ben Lalez Team here in Chicago. Ben's actually been on the show before, and if I sound a little different and if I look a little different, it's because I'm actually in Ben's amazing Bucktown office, and he so generously invited me to come along. I'm excited to see you again.
Welcome.
Yeah, let me tell you a little bit more about Ben. We'll keep it short because we have a lot to sort of talk about. But Ben really started as a general contractor. He went full-time in real estate in 2019, and I want you to pay attention to these numbers because in 2017, he did $4 million in production. In 2018, $14 million, so a $10 million jump in just 1 year. The next year, he did $24 million, another $10 million jump. And in the trailing 12 months, Ben Lalez Team has closed $165 million in production, and it's just incredible. There's 45,000 real estate agents here in the Chicagoland area. I've yet to see somebody quite grow so quickly and build a team as fast as Ben has. He is a household name here in Chicago amongst agents. But Ben and his team pride themselves on thinking and dreaming big and never getting out hustled. To learn more about Ben and his team, please visit benlalez.com. That's BenLalez.com. Ben, it is a real pleasure to be here in your office.
It's almost like I didn't provide all of those stats to you, the way you made it sound. But
my crack team of, well, it would be, I was going to say researchers, but it was you who sent us this information. But really, you are all, I am on the Chicago Association of Realtors, which is our local association. I'm on our YPN committee, which is for Young Professional Network, which is ironic because I am 46. I shouldn't technically be allowed to be on there.
Still look good.
Thank you.
Best hair in the game.
Thank you. But what's funny is every year what we do at YPN, and Ben knows this because he's been to many of these events, is we have these breakfasts where we bring in top producers. And so we have to plan these as a committee. And your name has come up. I've been in the committee 2 years. My third year will be this next year. Your name will come up again every meeting next year. It came up every meeting this year because of the explosive growth. People don't understand it. Other agents are inspired / jealous of this. It's really, really cool to be here and to have your attention because you are, I don't want to say even a rising star because you're obviously already one of the top producers here in Chicago, but the fact that you rose so quickly is just, I've yet to see it and in anyone else. So congratulations on the team's success.
Man, I didn't expect so much flattery right out of the gates, but we appreciate it. It's, there's no secrets, as you know, just hard work.
Well, tell us a little bit about, you've been on the show before, and it was so funny because after we got done talking, Ben had sort of shared with me, he said, we're really ready to take this to the next level. And I said, okay, but most people will say that, right? Like that's a very common thing that people who own businesses or who have a team in real estate will say, hey, we're poised to go to the next level. And not everyone does. Yeah. And then you just legitimately went to that next level, just as you said you would, in the time frame you said you would. And I want to know all about how you went from being an individual producer, And look, it's not like you work at a little small company where they just decided, you know what, everyone's going to work with Ben because he's the top sales guy in our office. You work for one of the top, producing companies in the industry, Compass. You are, for lack of a better word, a cog in this wheel of Compass.
No
it's
doubt.
an impressive wheel, and you are an impressive cog in that wheel, but you're also one of thousands of agents here, and yet you have risen even to the top of Compass here in the local market. Tell us, I just love hearing how people do that. So Share with me.
What's really interesting is when we first did this podcast, it was in 2020, right before COVID, or late 2019.
Right.
And no, it was right when I moved over to Compass. So I think it was probably February of 2020.
2020, right before, yeah.
So we had our 2019 numbers, they were out.
Yeah.
And I was sitting, on this podcast at my single desk at the Compass office.
Sure.
And, I was just happy to be on the podcast. You guys had reached out to me and I'm like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. And I didn't know, we didn't talk about what the title of the podcast would be, but I remember it. There's no way you remember it.
I don't.
It was 4 to 24 million.
Yeah, that sounds right.
In 2 years.
Yeah.
And now we've gone from 24 to 165 in another 3 years. And to answer your question, and like for anyone who's listening, it's all about, it's leads and sales, right? And throughout my entire career, even when I was doing 4 million, 14, whatever the numbers were, my whole philosophy has been, grow organically, whatever feels normal for me, and then make the necessary changes. If it feels right, just to head in that direction. So what happened with me, and growth doesn't happen by accident, right? There was a game plan. But what I always tell people is, you're only as good as your sales, you're only as good as your leads. So every time I personally had too much business to handle, what do? You bring on another agent. And then when us three had too much business to handle, you hire another agent, and so on and so forth. And now we have a large team. It's one of the largest in Chicago, but it's only because we have enough business to go around. There are teams out there who are hiring for ego, in my opinion. This has nothing to do with that. We're hiring I only hire out of need. Sebastian is sitting right to our left, hired out of need. Our second videographer, hired out of need. We have 2 ISAs. Do you get where I'm going with this?
Yes.
Hired out of need, but it is only because we have enough to go around, and all of these people are necessary to keep, the boat afloat, if you will.
Well, it's funny because you hear so much about 10x or 3x, 5x, depending on how much you pay attention to things like valuation and growth, and a lot of it's, for lack of a better word, marketing sort of smoke and mirrors BS, and it's the promise of something that rarely ever happens. Businesses usually don't 10x. It's certainly possible, but you sort of have done that, and I don't know what the actual X is.
From 14 to 165, if you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, pretty significant.
4 years, yeah.
Yeah, in 4 years. So you've actually done that. So it's not just like, hey, we've just organically grown. Yes, you have, but you've organically grown in a way that's almost exponential. And that to me is interesting. And yes, of course, it's leads and business. Everything is leads and business when it comes to growth. But how were you able to accelerate it so much? Nothing was handed to you.
No.
And that's the other thing that's really important, because a lot of times when people get to certain levels of production, things do start to happen for them. Things are handed to them.
Yep.
But that really wasn't your path.
No, so I'll answer this 2 ways. One, people have to, this is my 4th business that, I think of it as a business now, right? I'm not just a real estate agent. This is a business that, I've cultivated. I had a business in college. I was a general contractor. I was a property manager. This is now what I consider my 4th business. What I've learned along the way is, the most cliche thing ever. You have to spend money to make this kind of money. You'd be shocked if I showed you what my expense ratio is. You'd be
Sure.
absolutely shocked, but you have to be very, very on top of your numbers. So on the one hand, I think a huge part of this is I'm thinking about it a little bit differently, where people don't come into the business understanding that I'm a company. We are Ben Lalez LLC. We're established. We have, expense reports. We have P&Ls. And the average agent listening to this, I would imagine that's not how they're entering, right?
Sure.
I have the benefit of other businesses that either I shut down or have frankly failed, and you learn from them. The second way I would answer is this. You're a perfect example, DJ. Right before this podcast started, I think your watch lit up and you got an alert, right? And your eyes lit up.
So yeah, just to peel back the curtain. So I recruit agents, and I got a lead from one of somebody visited our website, said, hey, I'm thinking about joining your company. I was beside myself for a moment that I couldn't immediately respond to that.
Do we have it on camera? I think we have it on camera. And this is where we insert it right here, if possible, where he looked at his watch and he was like,
I was like, oh no, we got to start. I got a lead. Yeah.
So, however many years in, if we get a lead via any channel, I'm getting the same notification. And if it's here, today, $13,000 parking spot, right? Someone wants to buy a $13,000 parking spot. I am making sure that whoever it's getting assigned to is, actually taking care of this client. It may not be the sexiest thing in the world. We know it's not, but you never know where it's going to lead. So every single lead, no matter how attractive or unattractive, gets handled the exact same way. And I think that's a huge part of this is what is that way? It's our system. It's the, it's cheesy as hell, like the Ben Lalez way. I've taught it to 22 people now. Lead comes in, you do A, B, C, D, E, and the system, we use Salesforce. Like it's going to tell you exactly what to do and when, and just do it. And if you continue to do it over and over and over, and we have a funny saying, like a lead isn't dead until they
tell you to screw off.
Yeah, until they tell you to F off is what we say.
Yeah.
And we have it for 365 days is our policy.
Sure.
Where I want proof that you were talking to a wall for 365 days, and then cool, let's kill it. Like let's kill the lead and then you move on. But how many agents do you know that don't follow up on a lead?
So I used to work, before I got into real estate, I worked for a tech company that generated health insurance leads for health insurance agents.
Yep.
So we were, at the time, the company I worked at, we were producing about 15,000 leads a day. And then we were selling them to agents all over the country. And so one of my jobs was to help educate the lead buyer about, because of course, as a company, we want them to keep buying leads, so we have to teach them how to work these leads.
Yep.
We had millions of leads. We had millions of leads that we could go through our data and look through our servers, and actually we had a CRM that would come with it. Now, not everyone used our CRM, but for people who did use our CRM, we were able to take a look at that data and see how quickly an agent would drop a lead, and it was shocking. So what we found was that the average consumer, when they need to buy health insurance, it would take them about 13 days before they'd actually make a buying decision. It's kind of complicated. You got to call your doctors. Are you in network with this, blah, blah. It's not quite as simple as other types of services. So it takes a couple of weeks. But the buying decision happens on day 13 on average. Most of our buyers would give up by day 3.
The buyers of the leads.
Of the leads. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. So the agents would buy these leads. They would call, maybe they'd call 10 times in 3 days. They'd give up. Person's not interested. They'd move on. We found, that person actually about another week from now is really going to make that decision.
Yep.
So I think we're sort of saying the same thing.
Speaking the exact same language, and a lot of it is, for the first 6 months, me or one of our sales managers is looking at every single lead, and we want to see that something was logged every single day. We have like a whole process for how often before you get to recategorize them.
Sure.
And we just, this is what I discovered from 4 to 14 and 14 to 23 million. Okay, this works. And then we just duplicated it and poured gasoline on it and spent more money. And, people who are listening, who are spending money on, I don't care what lead avenue, like even agents on my team, follow up 2-3 times. If it doesn't pay right away, they move on. And we have ways to make sure, like I'm notified when that occurs, and we track conversion ratios pretty intensely here. So you get a lead, we expect a certain conversion ratio on that lead for, the year. And just do it over and over and over and over again until you want to rip your hair out.
It's really funny. I was right down the street here, because our offices are pretty close to each other. I drive by this guy. He's got a billboard, and this is such a perfect example of follow-up. Although it's going to be in the, you're gonna have to make a little bit of a mental leap here to get this.
I'll try my best, DJ.
Well, it's more for the audience. Because you and I live here, so you might have even seen it. There's this guy, he's got a ski cap, and he's got a billboard, and he kind of doesn't look like a celebrity, and I guess his name is Tim, and it says Timcast, which would lead me to think he has a podcast. His name's Tim. That's about all I know, and that's all that it says. And it says weeknights from 7 to 8, everywhere podcasts are streamed. And he's got these billboards, and I go, well, that's unusual. I've never seen a podcast like that here in Chicago with a billboard. And I thought, maybe he's trying it for a month. God only knows what it costs. And now it's the second month. And so finally, I was like, just because I drove by it every single day, I'm like, I want to check out what this guy is. Now, it turns out it's a political show, and it's not really my cup of tea at all. But I checked it out because he was, in a way, following up with me. I was seeing his face every day for about 2 months. And finally I was like, I got to figure out who this guy is. And again, that's not a perfect metaphor.
This is perfect. And
but it's all about repetition, and
it's about layering. You're layering these touch points.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he was trying to get on your LinkedIn newsfeed.
Oh, for sure.
He was
yeah.
trying.
He's not just doing billboards. I just happen to drive by it every day. But for agents who are listening, I mean, this is the wonder of technology. I mean, there's a lot of things that we could argue with, in particular social media, that maybe divide us and make us less happy. But from a business perspective, what a great opportunity to stay in touch with your contacts, know what they're up to, know where they're going on vacation, and being able to comment on things outside of real estate as a way, as a touch point, versus just, hey, are you ready to buy or sell? You have all this opportunity. Information is just, people just give away their lives online. And so you now have reasons to contact them and talk about it. And I'm curious for you, how often, or what is, so you have some, a lead comes in, you have them at least set up for 365 days of contact.
Yeah.
What do you usually find what is the usually time to, how long does it take before they actually become a client?
Yeah, so I'll kind of just give it away because, no one's actually going to implement it. So lead comes in, everyone knows speed to lead. You need to contact them in the first, we want to do it in the first 30 seconds,
Sure.
Whatever. Once, hopefully best case scenario, they become a client and you're interacting every single day and, you guys live happily ever after, you sell them a home. But if that doesn't occur, what we want is 4 touch points the first day. And if they're complete silence or not interacting, you put them on the shelf for 3 days. They come back, you hit them 4 more times, and this is all logged. If you can't get them to engage, you put them on the shelf for a week. They come back, the system tells you it's time to reach out to DJ again.
Right.
Hit them 4 more times. So at that 7-day mark, 1 week mark,
You have a better sense of where they're at.
yeah. And then, I let them put them on the shelf for a month. They come back, you hit them 4 more times. Put them on the shelf for 3 months. They come back, hit them 4 more times. Put them on the shelf for 6 months, and then, hit them 4 more times. And then after you aggregate all of that time, that was a year, they come back after 6 months. You try again, you try to get them to engage, and we can talk about exactly how we go about that. But, after that, a lot of this is like, okay, you can feel good about how much effort you put in. So that's 4 times, I don't even know, I think it's 8. So it's like 32 attempts to get someone to engage with you. I feel like that's enough, don't you?
Yeah.
Our numbers prove it. It is enough.
It is enough, but it's getting to that 32, right? That most people aren't. Well, it's not that they're not willing to. They don't have a system that would tell them you're now at step 17 and you're halfway through the process and you're at 6 months. This is totally normal. This person's blowing you off. Totally normal. It's okay. It's part of the process. It takes the emotion out of it. I'm just running the program essentially.
So here's one of the biggest challenges I hear from agents across, the city, country, et cetera, is you can always do more. Your work is never done. People don't know when their day is done. So the system that we have, I just told you about how people cycle through. So you have top priority clients, you put them on the shelf, they're ignored, and then they become top priority clients again after X period of time. That's how the system is set up. It's actually really stupid, really simple.
Sure.
So some people, like brand new, maybe only have 10 top priority clients. Joey Halperin on my team, for example, he probably has 60 top priority clients, and that means that they need some form of contact today, right? So it's obviously going to take Joey a lot longer than a brand new agent, but for both of them, it's the same philosophy. After you get done with your top priority clients, your day is finished. It's done. And that's like a really big unlock in a lot of my agents' heads, where I'm like, go to the gym. Go take your significant other out. Like, go do whatever makes you happy. Let me handle the leads. Let me handle the infrastructure. Let me handle your transaction management. Let me handle your social media. Your day is done, right? You may want to work on some other aspect of your business plan, be it marketing. We have a lot of where we're sitting. If you look at our videos, we do a ton of our video here.
Yeah.
So people just literally funnel in and out of that door. We handle it. We post it for you, et cetera. But that's that's how this was built. I wanted to know when my day was done.
Yeah.
And it was impossible because follow-up is theoretically never ending.
Right.
Like you could prospect 24 hours a day theoretically, but we developed a way to, it was through a lot of trial and error. Do this and you're done.
We talk about competition, especially around lead generation. So, we all get emails from, these unknown services that are promising Facebook leads.
Yep.
Or you can go the more traditional route with Realtor.com, Zillow, et cetera. And then there's, of course, referrals from existing clients. What have you found to be, because everyone else I talk to who has not grown, I've never met anyone who's quite had the growth that you've had. So everyone else I talk to has grown strictly organically. But when you talked about pouring gas on the fire,
Yep.
you're talking about investing into the business,
Yep.
finding those people that raise their hand and say, I want to talk to a realtor. And what I'm curious about is, what does the competition look like? Meaning, understanding that the person who fills out a lead form and gets sent your way, good chance that they might have filled out a lead form and are also talking to another agent.
Come on.
So, of course, right? So, how do you, is it as competitive as somebody who isn't participating in this sort of space, or is it less competitive than you think?
It's way less competitive, especially we'll call it at this level where we are training every single day about how to go about X, Y, and Z scenarios, so that when there's another agent, we assume that there's another agent in the picture.
Sure.
So like we preach, if you're going to meet someone for the first time, at some point you need to ask them for their business.
Right.
It's not just, all right, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
No, like our line, right, is, and we call it like the stoop talk after the first showing is, hey DJ, has anyone ever actually walked you through the home buying process here in Chicago?
And the answer to that is almost always no.
Especially with a lead, like a
Right.
cold lead off of Zillow, Realtor.com,
Yeah.
like Face, whatever.
Yeah, definitely a no. Yeah.
Yeah.
No?
Oh, no? Oh, well, do you have a couple minutes for us to, run through it?
Perfect. I love it.
So what we see happen is like this sigh of relief, like, oh, thank God, someone, like a human being is actually going to spend the time to walk me through it. But, hey, DJ, okay, step one is finding a real estate agent, someone like me, to walk you through everything A to Z. So if everything works out, I'd love to be that guy for you. Step 1A, we need to introduce you to a lender. I assume you don't have $500,000 sitting under a mattress. This is a recording. So like literally, like we have a recording.
Yeah.
And everyone needs to repeat A to Z
Sure.
verbatim, the way I say it.
Right, because it's your team.
Yeah. And then once you have it polished, you can put your spin on it. I don't
Right.
really care. But like we need to get to that. We call it the stoop talk, the right hook. You need to tell them like, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to do for you. But a lot of people don't have, a lead starts with a call or a click or whatever, but there's probably 40 steps to actually, converting this lead into an actual client. And we have every single tiny little step formalized, systemized. There's no guessing anymore. And it's like essentially what I did to go from 0 to 14, and then we just copied it. There's agents on the team right now. I think we have 4 or 5 agents doing, 10 plus million.
It's amazing.
And some of them you should probably be interviewing them. They're going
Yeah.
from like 0 to 10 in 12 months.
That's incredible.
We have agents who got their license and are doing 7 million in their first year. I'm talking about, Mara, if you could look on our website. Now all the recruiters are going to go after her, but
I mean, it really is impressive. I found in pretty much every area of life, not just specifically to being a successful real estate agent, but it's discipline and systems, it's consistency, and it's about the marathon, right? Like it's just understanding that this is the process, and it takes. I think being reactive takes a huge emotional toll. It wears me out when I'm reactive, and I know that realtors have to really figure out the balance of being proactive versus reactive, because things are flying at them all day long.
Oh, yeah.
emails, texts,
Yep.
you know, and trying to figure out how to bat that stuff away, and you know, service the client at the same time. Also understanding, how do I get this back into this process? How do I just keep this process going? To me, processes. It's funny. I think back to your point about asking for business. I think most people don't have any scripts at all. Quite honestly. And now the people I interview on this show, yes, they are people that they know their pitch, they know how to present, they're successful, like people like yourself, of course. But for our listeners, if you don't have an elevator pitch, like locked and loaded, a 20-second, this is what I do, this is how I can be helpful, and then here's how to get to the next step. Oh, if you want to give me your email and phone number, I can send you some more information, or whatever the next step might be. If you don't have that ready and locked, like, you're gonna just miss opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. I think most people don't even have that.
I want to play a game. I was actually looking to see if anyone was here, where I want to like pull in one of my agents, and you just hit them with, you know, a common sales objection.
Sure.
And you know, that person and I would say the exact same words to you at the exact same speed and the exact same tone. And that's, you know, 22 deep. You know, we have 4 newer agents, and you know, we're still teaching them, but the other 18 will say the exact same stuff to you.
Yeah.
And you know, we don't want people to think too hard. This business isn't rocket science. What I continue to tell these agents who I'm sending out on appointments is, whoever you're meeting is, they got really lucky that it's you.
Yeah.
Right? As opposed to someone who has absolutely no idea what they're doing. You have a ton of infrastructure behind you. There's even if you don't know the question in real time, you don't know the answer to the question in real time, I guarantee someone here knows, and you can acquire that information in under 5 minutes, right? So, I mean, that's a huge part of this, and a huge part of, I think, our value proposition under this roof is like, you skip 4 years.
Yeah, and the teams have I believe recruiting for realtors it's all going to be teams in the next, you know, it's already pretty much is, but it's certainly trending that way, and teams are just becoming more and more important, because to the client there's an obvious value proposition there that makes sense. To the agent, there's an obvious value proposition there, because you get the experience, like you were just saying, and the support and the wisdom of the team collectively. And I think, you know, do you think this is the death knell of the individual agent? Is the individual agent on their way out?
I personally don't think so. I think if you're a good solo agent, I think you can still sell your value proposition. Like, hey, you're only dealing with me. Mm-hmm. Every phone call, every text, the lender, everything is going to go through me, and I got you. And it all depends if that's what the consumer wants. Now, something for sure that we know, you know, after doing this for enough time, is to get to, call it 50 closed clients, it's going to take you a whole hell of a lot longer to get there. Something that we talk about is $1 per hour. I mean, ad nauseum. Like, that's all we talk about. And that's what I'm trying to do is like, yeah, you may, on those, your first 20 humans that you close, you may make less money, but you got to those 20 probably 4 or 5 times faster than you ever would. And those 20 are, you know, at least here, those 20 are yours. Right. So you know, for the rest of your career, those 20, you can jump to, you know, your company. Like, right. Those 20 are yours. And that's, I think, somewhere around 50 or 75 closings is enough to, you know, perpetuate an entire career. Mm-hmm. If you know, nurture those people correctly. It's
a really good point. Yeah, it is funny. I love hearing those stories too, where it's like, I built my whole career off of 10 people or 20 people, and yeah, absolutely. But if you want to grow beyond that, that's where you got to start reinvesting. And what's been your experience with lead providers? I'm curious on have you found lead quality going up, down, staying consistent? What have you found?
Are we familiar with the Zillow Flex program before we jump in here?
So let me just explain to the audience what we're talking about. So Zillow Flex program is basically so OpCity came onto the scene, and as a counter to what Zillow was doing at the time, where Zillow was just selling leads directly to agents, price per lead kind of scenario. If somebody raises their hand, they want to talk to an agent, that's going to be a certain amount of money. OpCity comes along and says, we're going to give you the lead free up front, and you're going to pay for it on the back end. So free up front, and then we're going to take, so Zillow says, okay, we're going to try that as well. That's the Zillow Live Transfer. So it's not available in every market, only in a few markets at this point, I believe. But leads free up front, pay at closing.
Yes. So, we can just be, I'll peel the curtain back. So in 2019, 2020, I was spending about 20 grand a month on Zillow leads paid up front.
Sure.
And we were getting something like 35 live transfers. So there's calls versus nurture leads, which are frankly garbage. So of those 35, we were making good enough money. I was like, we were spreading these leads around, and they came and knocked on our door, and they were like, hey, we want you to spend more money. I'm like, get out of here. I'm spending 20 grand a month. Leave me alone. Isn't that enough for you?
Right. They should erect a statue of you.
Yeah. I mean, there are people who were spending way more.
Oh, sure.
So they were like, hey, we think you'd be a good candidate for this program. Yeah. And I listened, and I was really, very scared about it, because what I was doing was working objectively. I was tracking ROI as crazily as anyone you've ever met. I wanted to make sure that this $20,000 a month made sense.
Yeah.
Go figure, right?
Yeah.
So we decided to, do it, and our, connection volume, that 35, didn't go up right away. But, I wasn't paying for it up front. I was like, okay, this feels good. Fast forward, we're only on it for, we've only been on it for 15, 16 months. We get 165 of those live transfers a month.
Wow.
Has our call quality gone down? Has our lead quality gone down with Zillow, who is,
right.
That's our bread and butter. We have,
sure.
50% of that 165 is, not really. Probably 35% of that 165 is from Zillow leads.
Sure.
Has the quality gone down in the last 3, 4, 5 months? Yes, but I don't think it has anything to do with Zillow or any other lead provider. I think the buyer quality has gone down dramatically. The people who were most serious all did what they needed to do in 21 and early part of 22.
Sure.
Now you have these people who are just like these wet noodles, like, oh, I didn't, interest rates were too low, there was too much competition, oh, interest rates are too high, why aren't these properties moving? So I think it's more about the consumer, consumer dynamics have changed, not necessarily, I think Zillow and Realtor, I think they're probably doing the same thing they've always done.
Sure.
I think just as interesting a question is, what is Zillow doing with market-based pricing versus Zillow Flex? And that's all conjecture, but right now we're not feeling the burden quite as much as others that I've spoken to.
Yeah, no, and the reason I was asking that question was only because I know your systems are they're flexible, but they're also pretty well established.
Tight.
So I was curious if you've found any change with interest rates, of course, changing. Inventory has changed. What are the biggest challenges your team's facing right now? What are you guys dealing with?
Absolutely no doubt about it. So we are still 75% buyers. Buyers are flimsier. They aren't as serious. They aren't, once they go under contract, way more are falling out and not having anything to do with the property. They just get cold feet. They just they're coming up with any excuse you could imagine to fall out. And I think the biggest thing is so we're across all our lead sources, our conversion ratio is still about the same, but the time it takes to get someone across that finish line, you heard me talk about dollar per hour.
Yeah.
Dollar per hour is going way down. So it's taking, whereas it may take 30 hours from call to going under contract, we've become, used to, I think that 30 hours has become 70 hours.
Wow.
So, in a very real way, you're making half the money.
Right.
And, that's, these things, like, they weren't intuitive to me when I first came into the business.
Sure.
But that's how, we're training people how to think. DJ, let me ask you a question. Let's turn the tables.
Please.
What's your dollar per hour? If you are sitting at home,
Yeah.
and you're doing something that you love, you're playing tennis, you're working out, whatever the case is, you're relaxing. How much does it cost to have you stop and come do whatever I ask you to do for 1 hour?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't know. I truthfully don't know.
Yeah, and it's not a really easy question.
No. But it's an important one.
Yeah. So, and there's a couple ways that I have my people think about it, and that's like, just because you may not make, your $200 an hour right there.
Right.
What is the potential of that hour?
Exactly.
Right. So for me, like, I have to see a path to somewhere around $1,000 an hour for me to take on a new client, for me to do this, for example.
Sure.
There needs to be a path to $1,000. It may not happen right now, but it could definitely happen in the future. And why? Because especially in the brokerage business, if I'm going to take on 4 clients, or I'm going to take on 10 meetings with leads, 10 appointments, that's at least 10 hours. But we know that only 1.5 of them are going to transact.
Right.
So if you're not, if you don't value your time quite enough, you're just going to be spinning your wheels, right? So, for all those listeners out there, like, what is your dollar per hour? Like, JP, who was sitting out here before, he's like, man, I have no idea, like $20. I'm like, okay. And now he's up to, 200. He needs to see a path to $200 an hour, because it's probably going to shake out to 125 or something after it's all said and done. And 125 an hour is not a bad living.
Well, that's true. It's a different skill set. It's actually a totally different skill set, because you have to you have to do systems, you have to manage, you have to hire. It's not typically the same skills that would make you a successful individual agent.
Yeah. So you have to come at it from like this completely different perspective, which I think we led with is, this is a company. We have a marketing department. We have a sales department. We have a transactions department.
It's a company.
We have an IT department. And even on an agent level, like a solo agent level, it's the same thing. You are the marketing department. You are the sales department. You need to get big enough to outsource marketing, I outsource sales.
Do you see yourself more as a manager, or as a team leader, or as a coach? Yeah, you're a coach.
Yeah, that's all.
That's your definition. I'm a coach.
Yeah, I'm a coach, and I'm also a business owner. But if I'm being, again, completely honest, and it's, I told myself that I would just, open book. I'm interested in outsourcing coaching as well.
Sure.
I want to outsource everything, period. As long as the coach is as good as me or better, I'm still providing value to my agents.
Right.
Right. And if that person is not also, doing all sorts of things, right?
Yeah.
I'm unavailable right now. If that coach is available 24/7, it's probably a better situation for the agents on my team.
Where do you get the most satisfaction?
Ooh, wow. What
do you enjoy the most about? Do you like being in personal production, even though you don't do that anymore?
No.
Okay.
No.
What's your favorite thing?
So I'm gonna reframe your question for the way my brain works. Is
Yeah.
when and how do I get into flow?
Yeah.
And for me, it's like when I'm creating a new system.
You like systems.
Yeah. Okay. Taking something that isn't working correctly, finding that software or hardware or whatever that will make it work, building out the system in order to implement it. That's what is most interesting to my weird brain.
Got it.
Yeah.
How did you, and you were in real estate, you were a GC.
Yeah.
But how did you decide was real estate more of an entrepreneurial path, or were you were you more about like, some people have that in them where they just see real estate and it becomes their life?
No, it's it kind of goes back to something we spoke about earlier, just like what felt organic. So I'll tell you a story. In 2019, when I went full time, I had like the biggest general contracting job that I ever, like, I couldn't believe that I had won it, and I had baked in so much more juice into the pricing than I ever have, because dollar per hour, and I wasn't enjoying it. Every time someone called me, like,
Yeah, you sense out a little, yeah.
and I'm like, well, that doesn't happen with the real estate brokering side. And I turned down, I mean, I would have made 150 grand on that one job alone. And I picked up the phone. I'm like, hey, I don't even remember the guy's name. I'm like, hey, I'm so sorry, but like, my heart just isn't in this job anymore. I'm afraid I'm going to have to decline. Thank you so much for the opportunity, whatever. And I didn't take on another job that day. And I, went full steam ahead because this felt right. Like, making good money. I enjoy it. At the time, the people aspect was more interesting to me, kind of as you progress in this business. It's really difficult to like manage. I've personally closed somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 transactions. Like, I don't want to manage more than that. I can't manage more than 400 relationships. It's not in me.
Right.
Despite how, like, I may not be super tight with someone, right? But 400 was enough. But managing, what's now 22 agents and some staff, I get a ton of joy from that.
Yeah, I imagine
feels right.
It feels almost like you're creating a legacy, I think, of sorts. And I don't mean that from an ego perspective, but you're actually building something that you have full control over the process, or a collaborative control over, I should say. The people, I know people on your team, they're very happy. But this idea of skill building is really, really important to you. Skills and systems.
No doubt.
I think if every day, if I woke up every day and I focused on a certain skill and I just spent 10 to 20 minutes developing a particular skill, I feel like my career would be further along, but also
how could it be further along, DJ?
Well, I just think that it's something that we stop doing when we get into adulthood. We stop developing skill, and I see it as a huge problem. There are really important skills that one can, no matter what field you're in, if you can devote your life to skill and service, boy, I mean, you're right. There just isn't that much competition, because most people will end up getting comfortable and just continuing on.
I think there's something to be said for, like, I'm relatively young for this volume, 34 years old. There's something to be said for the ability to take risks when you're younger, mm-hmm. and like, if it doesn't work out, whatever. Even as I sit here today, I'm way less likely to take a risk because things are working. I'm not going to, I'm pushing myself every day to try and do something bigger and crazier. And I kind of think of it as acquiring a new skill, doing something I haven't done yet and trying to make it work. And it gets more and more challenging every year that goes by.
What's next for you? Where do you see the team headed?
I was having that conversation today, and I think the immediate next step, what feels right, because we do have lead overflow, you've heard me talk about it over and again, is what feels natural is adding some more agents to support the existing lead inflow, and then see from there. That's it.
Yeah, it's funny. I've asked a lot of my guests that over the years, like, okay, where do you see? And they're like, I'm just gonna keep going, and because they've built some sort of system or team or process, it works, and it's just a matter of juicing it up a little bit.
So the reason why it's such a mundane answer is I recognized early that every single thing that I do has to be built with scale in mind. Right. So everything that we have kind of like what you have going on.
Yeah.
It doesn't really make a huge difference right now. If we add 1 or 30 agents, the infrastructure is already built where it shouldn't be ultra burdensome. So the question is, like we talk about, a lot of this comes down to like, what is next? Forget about like what I want to do next. Like what is next for real estate?
Yeah.
And we talk about making sure that Sebastian is still sitting right over there. So like we talk about is making sure that we're first, whatever it is.
Right.
So we think even though we're not the best at it, in Chicago, we were first to video. We were. So right now, and everything that we do for video has scaled. So you take a look at me and you take a look at David Fields, Alex Bach, Joey Halperin, JP, they all look exactly like me on all of their social channels because we built a machine, right? We have 4 editors overseas, whatever. So what is that next thing? So like we talk about being first in virtual. If we're definitely not first, but the first to like take it to Bob and Sally homeowner.
Sure.
Right. So what do you think it is? I don't know.
I don't know. I remember years ago I was fortunate enough to be at a birthday party in San Francisco with somebody who was at the time on the board of directors for, I'm going to say Guitar Center, but it could have been another company. I don't remember. But anyway, he was also the CFO of like NerdWallet or one of those companies.
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, big deal tech finance guy, and he really nice guy. And I said, I'm getting into real estate, not as an individual producer, but just as a business opportunity. And he goes, agents will not be needed in 10 years. And
when was this again?
What's that?
When was this conversation occurring?
This was 8 years ago.
Okay. Still 2 years for his prophecy to be fulfilled.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he said, agents are not necessary. And I said, and at the time I thought, well, that makes logical sense because I wasn't a realtor. I'm technically still, I am a realtor, but I've never practiced as a realtor. So I don't really understand what realtors do, but the I know how they talk and I have them on my shows and I have lots of them in our office, but I don't actually know the process, embarrassingly enough. But I absolutely thought back then that he was right. I thought, why can't this be? I've been through this process. We don't really need people. But I'd had enough distance from the actual buying and selling process as a consumer to sort of forget how challenging it is. And then just a couple years ago, I bought again, and I went through the process. And now, so the first time I was in a tech I was in a tech job. No experience with real estate. Now, 10 years into real estate, 750 agents at our company. You'd think I would have a better handle on things. And I was like, oh my God, I forgot how crazy and stressful, and I absolutely need help on this. And thank God there's realtors out there to help me. And it was for my own purchase. And so he was wrong, thankfully, because the challenge, I think he was right in a lot of ways. And Zillow comes along and basically says, okay, we're going to take all of the objective stuff and we're going to take care of that for you. We can pretty much handle a lot of the facts and figures for you. Companies like Zillow and other tech providers. And then you, Mr. and Mrs. Agent, can now come across and you're the interpersonal component. You're the reason that you're going to be able to handle people's emotional reactions. You're going to be able to guide them through the process. And by the way, this is one of the most stressful processes that a human being can go through. It's right up there with death, loss of a job. It is from on a stress, the psychological stress levels, moving and buying a home and all of that. It's right up at the top. With the most stressful events in someone's life. And that's the one part that can't be automated. So he was wrong about that part of it and the significance of that. That the emotional connection that people have to their homes and making a switch, we all, obviously all of us know. And that's the cool part about technology is technology can kind of take a lot of that other stuff out of your to-do list, and then you now get to focus on, hey, I'm here for you. I'm with you. And I think that's the coolest part about this industry is you get to help people make really good decisions. Your team obviously is doing that. Can you talk a little bit about that part of it? Like you guys have all these processes for, converting a lead to a client. But I'm curious on the interpersonal side, like what are you guys doing to deepen those relationships? Because of course that's where the juice is.
So it's really funny. I don't know, what I heard was like, if you have processes and systems, you can't have as deep an emotional connection with your clients. Is that what you said?
Well, I don't believe that. I just think having those processes allow you to then focus on deepening those relationships.
Then we're on exactly the same page,
Yeah.
where because we have so much of the BS handled,
Exactly.
all we preach, I just want you to make sure that the end user, the buyer or seller, has the best possible experience. And the people here just have more time to actually do what they're best at.
Yeah.
I have like the people on my team, I try to hire for EQ, for emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
We do like a personality test
A
before.
disc profile or whatever.
We're an Enneagram team.
Sure.
But, that's the agents on my team are better than me now. Like they are so much better at handling buyer seller emotions. They're probably better at valuations. So just by virtue of them having the time and then the skills that we're teaching them, we probably do too many trainings. Like that's also my job, is like literally sitting in this room up on that screen. And we go over exactly what to say and do in a whole variety of scenarios. We also spend a weird amount of time, DJ, essentially in a more or less group therapy. So we have a session in this room called Talk It Out, where people just come in and bitch and we listen and people bounce stuff off, so that people recognize that, buyers and sellers are going through the toughest emotional situation that they can imagine, and it's your job to help them navigate it, and making sure that you're keeping things here, because it's not healthy for you personally. It's also not healthy for your clients to have you at that same level as them. Your whole job is to stay even keel, and making sure that that's said to our agents over and over and over and over again, so that they can deliver. I mean, really what we're striving for is like a consistent level of service.
Right.
We have deals from hell. We have
Sure.
shit that hits the fan. We have we have like a bad review or two because shit goes
Of
sideways.
course.
Right? But when you have stuff kind of all set up and already formalized for people, we can spend time sitting here. Like Claude is still over there working on the transactions. He's our transaction coordinator. You don't have to worry about that BS,
I think that's the real huge benefit of the team, is that, with a team, you can develop people in certain ways, and you can develop them with their individual interests and talents. And I think that is, in real estate, realtor history has not really been something that's been that prominent. And now, and you were saying some teams, grow for ego reasons, size, hey, I've got 30 people on my team. And then other, teams are structured a million different ways. Other teams are like everyone's their own individual practitioner, so it's not even really, it's more like a company or more like a brokerage in that sense. And then other people are like, okay, I these are my roles. But what I think teams can really help people do is not have to create and influence those systems that you've already established and can execute. So it is really funny. One of my very first interviews I ever had with on this podcast was a woman in the suburbs of Chicago, and she said, she's like, you can give me anybody and I will make them six figures by this time next year, but they have to do everything I say. She's like, I'm not saying that as an ego thing. She's like, I legitimately know how to do this, and you sort of have that same mentality. It's really pretty remarkable, actually, because I know a lot of our listeners are wake up every day going, what do I do today? What should I be doing? Where should I be focusing my time? Oh my gosh, there's so many things coming at me. How do I proactively build my business? How do I respond to clients? It's a lot. It really is a lot. And I think we're going to see a flight to teams. We've already started to see it. This flight to teams, people like you who have these processes in place that are like, settle down, I got you. I'm going to create the structure that you need, and I'm going to walk you through this, and you're going to have you're going to actually have more freedom through the structure that I'm giving you.
Yeah, it's interesting because I also see the way teams are run, and we, work hard, play hard is a cliche. Like, there are teams that pride themselves on like no days off. Like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
we're the, exact opposite. If you can make money at a high dollar per hour and service your clients appropriately, I want you to take as many days off as you can, because our philosophy is work hard, like rest hard, recharge hard. But getting back to one of your other points, the way, and this is something I'm still kind of sussing out. So like there's 22 agents. And we're all sharing in some capacity a transaction coordinator, videographer, CRM. Like, it's a co-op in some weird way.
It is.
Where instead of, hey, DJ, why don't you and I go hire an assistant together? It's like all kind of handled already. And like, I'll go and if we need a second transaction coordinator, I'll go, I'll handle it. If we need a fourth videographer, like, I'll go handle it. And everyone on the team trusts that my hiring processes are also tight, just like every other system. So, preaching to the choir here, how tight are your hiring systems?
Yeah, pretty tight. For us, if I had to wake up every day and try to figure out what I was supposed to do that day, I would be a mess. I probably would have, I don't know that I would even be on this earth anymore. It would be so stressful because I have a lot of responsibilities, and I've, multiple companies, you do as well. And this idea of having to, create structure, it's the only way for me, what structure has done for me is allowed me to be more creative, oddly enough, because when I can devote a specific amount of time to creativity, being that if I can structure my creativity, as crazy as that sounds, it actually works much, much better. And I'm a creative person. I don't want structure. I don't like structure. I don't like doing the same thing over and over and over again, but it works for me. And it works for probably most of us as well. So I don't think it's just, me being the sort of artsy podcast guy. I think most of us in this industry could benefit from having a more salary-styled job. Fortunately, you can join a team and have a similar experience.
It's a hybrid experience.
A hybrid experience with a lot more income.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to provide to these agents is high dollar per hour and flexibility. Some teams, like, you can potentially make more money, no doubt, but they own your schedule. Like, you do what I say, when I say it, et cetera. And I'm trying to toe this line, and it's worked so far. Yeah. Where, I'd like you to come to these trainings. They're not 100% mandatory. Like, you need to use my CRM. It's not like 100% mandatory. You don't have to tell me when you're going on vacation or anything like that. But at some point, if you don't do things the way we say, it's gonna cause problems for me, right? Because you're not producing at a level that we all, expect. At the end of the day, it is a company, and you need to bring in money so that I can keep the lights on, not only for you, but for everybody, for everybody else.
Really, I think what we're talking about is I don't want to sound pejorative because it isn't.
Can we get
we're talking
a
about
definition of pejorative for those?
Sorry, it's a fancy.
Not for me. I know what it means, but for everyone else.
It's a fancy word for being a slight to somebody or being critical. This is not a criticism at all. I actually.
You're not being pejorative.
I am not being pejorative.
Okay, got it.
But it does sound. What I'm about to say is this is business 101, and that is not to say that it's simple and easy. It's not, but it is important, right? So if you're treating this industry like a business, you then have to figure out systems and you have to figure out processes. And I think systems is really probably the best first place anyone should start, is systematizing their business, finding those repeatable tasks that are continually come up that they can automate.
So kind of like boiling this down, I remember our conversation. You asked me something like, what is the most important thing you would tell an agent? And I think it's a good place to kind of wrap up.
Sure.
I'm leaving for Dallas tomorrow. But what I said last time was like CRM. Like if you don't have a CRM, then what are you doing? And interestingly enough, that hasn't changed. But I personally think now, after I don't know how many more years and how many more additional sales, if you are in, what percentage of this business do you think is follow-up?
Oh gosh. Follow-up, I place a pretty high value on follow-up. I'm going to say 70% of the business is follow-up.
That's exactly the number that we talk about.
Okay.
So 70%. So get your CRM in place and focus 70% of your day on following up. If you can handle those two things, then, I mean, you're probably, I would argue, 90% ahead of everyone else who's just winging it. It's just two things.
Yeah, it's a hard two things though. I've always thought the best people in service are always the ones that call you just before you call them, right? They call you and they're like, oh, hey, that thing, here's the answer. You don't have to call me again about it. You know, it's essentially what the message is. You don't have to call me about that thing. I've got it, right? If that can be the client experience, that they don't ever have to dial your number, is like, to me, that's a wild success.
So it's listen to the end. This should be the clip that we like tease people with.
Yeah.
Make it all the way to the end for the, the primary useful piece of information.
Never, I love it. We're ending with the most valuable piece. I love that.
And most obvious and mundane, but.
Well, most obvious and mundane, but you know what? John Wooden, who I believe is the most winningest coach.
Socks. Tell me you're going to tell a socks story.
Oh no, I don't. So this is the embarrassing part. I know nothing about sports. The amount of information I have goes down about 1 millimeter into the water for sports. I know nothing. But John Wooden was all about systems, processes, and like shooting free throws. 500 of them a day.
Well, let me give you another one about
Not
John
exciting,
Wooden.
but it works.
Let me give you the first thing John Wooden taught his players.
Yeah.
Was how to put on their socks appropriately to avoid blisters and athlete's foot.
Sure.
Well, you want more basic than that?
Yeah, and winningest coach in NCAA history.
Yeah.
Also,
put your socks on right, DJ.
Also, never looked at the scoreboard because he said the scoreboard didn't tell him the information he wanted.
Yeah.
And that's a really, really interesting point. And so then it's like, okay, well, if he wasn't looking at the scoreboard, what was he looking at? He was looking at individual performance. He was looking at each, because he would say, as you exit the court, only you know if you played well. You might have won or lost, but you could still feel good on a loss if you played well. And so I think that's what we're talking about, right? We're talking about playing well. Like the results end up, well, your results have been.
If you play well, the volume will show in our industry.
Amazing. Ben, thank you for coming on a second time. I am just completely enamored. You're younger than me and just doing so many cool things in real estate. It's really impressive. The Ben Lalez team has taken over Chicago, quite honestly.
Before you wrap up, I want to be the first to go on record saying that if there's ever someone to interview you, it's me.
I would love
because
that.
You need to be interviewed on the Keeping It Real podcast, because what you have that not everyone has, because I haven't listened to every single episode, sorry, but you
dare you?
But you have been sitting across how many of me?
I think we've done about 400 of these.
So it's about time you got interviewed and everyone else can draw out the information from you.
What I will tell you is the funniest part of this whole thing for me, this podcast, is that I always say I know the least amount about real estate than anyone who listens, certainly my guests and probably all the ancillary people involved too. But what I really love.
That's bullshit.
Well,
I've had conversations with you about real estate. That's absolute nonsense.
It's probably untrue, but but it's true enough in the sense that I just like talking to people who are exceptional.
Who knows more about recruiting than you?
Well, that's probably true.
Okay. Who knows more about title and finance and running a business than you?
Can I call you to pump me up every morning?
It's literally what you did at the start of this.
I appreciate.
I'm gonna
that.
ride high on your intro for the next 6 months.
I'm very grateful, and I probably downplay some of my achievements, but it is I'm truly honored to be here and to sit in this room with
Likewise.
you. What you've accomplished is remarkable.
Thank you.
It's just remarkable. And for everyone out there, you really should be paying attention to what Ben and his team are doing. Go to Ben's website, benlalez.com, BenLalez.com. Check out his team. They're amazing. Systems. Check out what they're doing with video too. Watch them on social. Follow them. They're ahead of the curve.
Copy us.
Copy us. Yes, copy them. They're just nice people. So. Anyway, this is very uncomfortable for me because I am not in my normal chair, so I don't even know how to wrap this thing up.
Do you normally have like a special spin?
I have a special,
you do?
yeah. I spin and I don't mean that in any sort of false.
In a pejorative way.
Well, that wouldn't be a pejorative statement.
Shoot. Okay.
It's really fun because when I meet people at your level. A lot of times I just find, I've built friendships out of this, and I consider you a friend. I'm proud to consider you a friend, and I'm a big supporter of yours, and I just want to see you continue to grow, and you obviously are, and it's just fun to be part of the ride, I guess. I think that's what's most interesting about the podcast is I feel like I just get to be like passenger in cars that other people are driving, and I just get to sort of hang out and see what they're all about, and maybe it'll rub off on me one day. But anyway, thanks, Ben. I appreciate you being on the show again.
Yeah.